one of the things that I wondered was, how do we make ourselves attractive to a trust? Because you must get a saturation of requests from colleges, from universities. So how do we start with it? How do we make ourselves more attractive than competitor colleges? Because obviously that is what you're going to be overwhelmed by, and we are aware of that. What's the best way of working? What's best practice?
Well, you need to collaborate. So the first thing to do is you've got to make sure that what you're doing meets their needs. So I actually formed a partnership up here in my local area, and I'm quite lucky that the 3 colleges serve 3 distinct areas. Where I am, I've got 1,000 square miles to cover as a trust. So I have 3 main hospital sites in effect, and I have a college that's pretty close to each one of them. So although they have students that do cross over, generally they don't. But one of the things that I did is pulled them all together, and we sat down and we started to discuss how we could make it work. So when you're delivering the training, you've got to make sure that it meets the basic requirements for the NHS. So, for example, hand hygiene training. We've now got all of the colleges. Their lecturing staff are now qualified to deliver hand hygiene training in line with my standards that I require for new entrants. Basic life support, the training delivered is a basic requirement of anyone that's working in a clinical environment. Part of the core competencies now delivered to my standard. So it's all sat there within the curriculum, but just by making sure that it's covered off and you've had that early engagement and it's signed off, it means when the student comes on placement, they haven't got to repeat training, which is a benefit for me as an employer because I can put them straight to work. But also what that means is that you're getting things ticked off as well. So for some of the lecturing staff, they've had a bit of CPD from some of my PEFs, so my practice educators. So again, making sure that all of it's tied together. Now, I've had the lecturing staff from both my Furness and Kendal colleges come into site to do an entire day's CPD training through the ETF training fund. So they've been in and they've done that. And that's how we've managed to explain to them, what the standards are. We've watched them deliver it. We've watched them demonstrate it. So we know that what they're doing is up to our standard. So it means that we don't have to repeat that training. So that's one of the really key things about, getting yourself ahead of anybody else is if you've had that engagement, you've had that, your students come in, they're ward ready. The other thing is ensuring that they've got their care certificate. So we've had a really long conversation around ensuring that the care certificate is delivered within that first year. Now, we've said we're happy to help sign off some of the practical elements, and we'll help with that. But, them having that care certificate before they do the bulk of their placement in year 2 is absolutely crucial, because it means that then we can let them loose on the wards, in a much more controlled, but it fits with our safeguarding. So we've got that level of control and that's in place. Now, I'm sorry, Annette, you said that you put the questions in the chat. Because I joined late, they're not there, so I can't see them.
I can happily read them out as well. I mean, that's really good. Just to kind of review whilst you're having to read through the questions, what you've talked about. I'm avidly trying to take notes. You said the basic requirements are hand hygiene training, basic life support. I'm presuming within that there's first aid, is there?
Yeah, there is to an element, but our core competency is around basic life support.
Right, okay. I'm sure this will mean a lot to Helen, who's just joined us, and also to Neelam, who are the experts in their field. And I like the idea of it means they're ready. You've talked about make sure there's a care certificate and that's delivered in the first year. So actually, you're starting to form a little bit of a model in my head that, do you feel for health and social care placements that actually the work experience should be in the second year?
So again, we've got a split model. So I'll go back a stage before I talk about what we do. So the original concept when being designed was that actually the placement would be a 3-month block, basically term 2 in year 2. That was the original design concept, and the reason for that was that they would get, you know, lots of experience in the first year, do their end of year exams. They would then do a little bit more training, and again, you know, they would come out and they would do the odd day in a hospital, or, you know, on placement, but they would come out for 3 months, and then they would put all of that to use in that 3 months. After that, they would then be doing their final exams, you know, so finishing off, refreshing of the academics, and that was the original model that was being discussed when we were designing the T-level. Now, unfortunately, you know, feedback from industry was that that probably was a little bit more difficult to fit with, and that they needed some flexibility in that model. So that's when it changed from a 3-month window down to 315 hours, and it could be taken flexibly throughout the entire course. So again, trying to stick with that, what we've done is we've taken a fairly unique approach depending on the organisation, but we are doing a placement at the end of year 1, so end of May into June, and we've kind of put it as a minimum of 10 days. So we'll be taking them for 10 days. One of the colleges wants us to take them for 4 weeks, but only doing 3 days a week. So they'll actually do 12 days, which again works for us because we've got that consistency. We know when it is, we can plan for that. They can be included in the rotas. There'll be supernumerary to that rota, but they know that they can have that individual on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They know that they've got an extra set of hands. It also means that they can tie off some of their health certificate, so they'll get some of their practical assessments done during that time. But they'll also get that first exposure to what it's actually like being in a hospital, or I should say a care setting, because some of them won't necessarily be coming onto one of my acute sites. I've got 56 satellite sites in total. Yeah, so I've got 3 main hospitals and the 53 other sites. So, you know, we will put them where we can, you know, to get them the best experience. And again, basing it on where they live as well. So the placement is fairly flexible, but we have said in year 2, we want them for a block. We want them for a block period. So they'll be coming in, yeah, as I say, for 10 days in year 1. The remaining 35 days will be in year 2. And you can work that out into your hours if you want, but, you know, that's roughly what we've turned around and said is that, you know, they'll be coming in for, you know, 70, 75 hours in year 1, and the remaining 250 or whatever it is in year 2.
I am typing as fast as I can. You might hear the tapping on the keyboard and the steam coming off my fingers at the moment. Neelam, I'm going to turn to you because this is brilliant what we've had so far, and certainly given us a really good idea of what a trust would want. Neelam, any questions arising from kind of what's just been said? Because it's been really useful to me. It's unlike the way we would normally work in health and social care. Certainly mine used to go out 1 day a week for 30 odd weeks. So it's a different way of thinking. Any thoughts on it at the moment?
Hi. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something similar to what we were actually doing as well with our students. So initially we would send them out in the first year, sort of from term 2 onwards, but then offer them a bit of a block placement in the second year. And simply because we wanted the learners to have the full sort of hours of placement ready for university. So I think from an element of how it's running or how it would run, essentially would fit quite well with what we're doing. I think one of the concerns what we raised at the beginning was about what level of experience students would actually get while they're on placement. So whether that would actually be valuable to them as sort of students and not sort of going in and making teas and stuff like that.
So Neelam, I'll be really clear here. So we visited one of our local colleges, me and the chief executive, on Monday. And we met their health and social care placement students. And the reason we were there is because they've created a state-of-the-art simulated ward, I think is the best way of putting it. It looks like a ward, it smells like a ward. The only difference is it's got plastic patients, not real ones. But the plastic ones are pretty darn good because they breathe, they have pulses, they have cameras in the eyes so you can see what, you can actually look and see what the patient would see. You can talk, it talks to you. You can remove pulses from it in its feet, in its arms, in its chest. It can scream at you, it can tell you that it's really confused and just start mumbling at you. But we went there to open that, and one of the things that we were really clear about while we were there is this facility is where they learn their skills. This is where they learn that technical ability. When they come to me, that's when they interact with patients, and they will be interacting with patients. They will have to learn all of the stuff that nurses have to do on a daily basis. Communicate with patients, help deliver their food, help getting them out of bed, help getting them into the bathrooms, but also, are they having their medication? Are they on the right drugs? What are their obs? Doing all of that. So we've been really clear that the practical element will come into it, but it's that social element of actually understanding what a nurse does. And that's where we've been really, really clear with them about that. And that's what we'll be expecting of them. So if they are going to make a cup of tea, it's for the patient, because that's what they would do. It's what the nurses actually do on the wards. It's not that they're going to be making the matron a cup of tea, because to be fair, the matron probably won't have time to drink it, if I'm honest. So we've really focused on making sure that we are, delivering a quality placement. And my point on this is, these are my nurses of the future. I need them to have the right skills. So if I don't invest in them right now, when I get them in another 2 years' time, because they've done their advanced apprenticeship or they've been off to university, then actually I'm shooting myself in the foot at the very first hurdle as an employer. So been really clear, with all, and there were 7 on that in that room that I met on Monday. All 7 of them want to come and work for me. All 7 of them want to be nurses. 4 of them want to be paediatric nurses. Again, couldn't think of anything worse, screaming children. 2 of them want to go and work in ED. So I had to explain to them, be expectant of dealing with drunk people on a Friday and Saturday night. And 1 of them, for some crazy reason, wants to go and work with old people. But all of them at that age, and this shows the caliber of the individuals, they have ideas where they want their career to go. 1 of them we've got, a little issue with, because she keeps passing out when she sees like slightly disturbing things. We have advised that potentially working in an acute environment might not be the best place for her. But she's working on that, and they're going through some stuff to make sure that when she does come, the first time a patient's catheter's removed and there's a bit of blood or some urine goes over the floor, she doesn't just cream in and fall over, because that would be really quite bad. But it's something that's been mentioned, and again, it comes back to that, having that open and honest conversation about what you're doing. And I think that's the biggest key to all of this, is start that communication as early as you can. Get the placement teams involved. Get them talking. Get them out there visiting. The placement officers from Furness at one point last year, I thought had moved in. Because that we're also supporting health science, so not just the nurses of the future, it's our biomedical scientists. We're supporting digital. We're going to take catering, we're going to take HR when it comes along, we're going to take engineering. It's a theme, and for us as an employer, it's a source of rich talent, and it's making sure that the employer understands what it is they've got to offer, because people don't know what T levels are. My trust are quite lucky. I've lived and breathed it, so I can tell the board what it is. you know, and I think sometimes that's the bit that's missing, is the fact that the boards don't know what it is a T-level student will offer. They don't know that it's equivalent to 3 A levels. They don't know that it's a really rigorous qualification, and that, you know, to get on it, you've got to be quite good, you know, because the chances of success are really, you know, important. So, you know, you're not going to be put in, you know, I hate to say it, the bottom of the bell curve onto these qualifications, because they just, it's not for them. They're too rigorous. And I think that that's the bit that is missing. Some people just don't understand that. As I say, my board get it impeccably, because they got like a 2-hour presentation from me before I even asked them of how many people we were going to take. You know, so, you know, my trust, you know, it's out there in the press. We've agreed to 100 placements a year. You know, so again, you know, we're taking 100 placements this year. T levels, I've got 23 in health and social care. One of the colleges that's involved with me doesn't even start delivering T levels until this September, but they've been engaged for the last 16 months. So, you know, even though they weren't going live, and the others went live in September, it means that, you know, they've managed to learn. So Morecambe and Lancaster College have learned everything that the others, you know, have had to go through. So, you know, that's made it, you know, really helpful.
Rick, can I just ask you, I mean, you talked about a fantastic simulation ward, and I know there was funding in the first round, and unfortunately as a college we've not been able to piggyback onto that, but which college is kind of doing that? Because it would be great if we could arrange a trip with the AOC or with the ETF to go out and see and work with that college. Is it Furness that you're working with that have the simulated ward?
Yeah, it's Furness College.
Yeah,
Sue Heenan's the vice principal and point of contact.
Sue
Heenan.
Keenan, right? Yeah. Brilliant. You'll have to forgive me. That's brilliant. That's a Furness. That's really helpful. Because obviously you've got a massively kind of well-resourced environment. You mentioned 7 students, and that is one of the things that I worry about with T levels, because I do see it as more of an elite. It's a learner that would ordinarily have gone on A levels, but totally focused on the career they want to do. They want to get in nursing. It's been interesting. We've been doing focus groups with a lot of our ESOL adult learners, and a lot of them will say they want to get into nursing. And unfortunately, it's not open as a gateway to them because they're all over the age of 19, but they're very, very got the values on. They want to care for people, a bit like yourself are saying they want to work geriatrics, very focused on where they want to be.
I don't want to work geriatrics, I can assure you.
Well, yeah, I've had my dad to work with the last few years, so I know what that's like at close quarters. But on a separate note, I mean, you're talking about 7 students. Do you see when the funding gets turned off for BTECs that there could be a concern here? Because really, T levels were about levelling up for a certain type of learner. Not every learner in that gap year will be able to get the level up. And I just wondered what experience you've got with colleges that are doing this level up gap year.
So let me just be clear. So 7 is their cohort for their first attempt. They've already got 24 applicants for next year, for this September. So in year 1, they had 7. They actually agreed to start 12, right. But then 5 have withdrawn themselves actually, and again, some of that was parental pressure and pushing them to actually go and do A levels.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And you know, I lay the blame for that squarely on the DFE's door, and I've told them in no uncertain terms, I can assure you, because I think that their comms plan has been rubbish. And Sue Lovelock, who was deputy director for delivery of T levels before Stella, used to hate walking in a room with me because she knew it'd be one of the first things I'd pick on her for. Telling her that I still haven't seen anything outside of London.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's an interesting one, but, you know, there is that opportunity. So I do know that there are a number of colleges that are providing that gap year to get the English and maths standard up. But
yeah, and the social skills, Ray, there's a big gap now that we're seeing as a college about the social skills, that some learners haven't matured beyond the year 10 because they've had so little time inside of a structured environment with COVID, that we're starting to see those gaps emerge, and we're trying to close down those gaps. So in terms of legalities of working in a hospital, I mean, like I say, when I ran my own department, I'm still not going to speak for Neelam because she does some brilliant work at the college. It was the low-hanging fruit. They were going into old folks' homes. They weren't get that quality of experience that you're describing. Are there legal things that we need to do outside of the normal DCS processes when they're going on to a ward? Is there anything that we need to kind of jump through red tape through with that? What's mired people?
no, so I keep this little poster on the wall behind me just here, and it says the legal bits. So under 18s can't carry out personal care in a care setting. Rubbish. A person over the age of 16 can work in that care setting as long as they are suitably trained, competent, and are supervised.
And that's where all your certificate comes in, and that's why you have all that in place before they walk onto a ward. And again, that makes you attractive as a college. And I think what was really important about something that you've said that I think is quite unique, Ray, is that you've been searching out the colleges that are going to be delivering it. How do we find somebody like you in the Midlands? Who do we target? Where's the start point, I suppose? I mean, it's quite a minefield. Like you say, you've got collaboration because you said, this is the way I want it to work. You've been really proactive.
So, yeah, so for me, your first point of call should be Health Education England. Okay. So Health Education England have coordinators across the whole country. So for me, it's a very nice lady called Gemma, and she is oversees the whole of the Northwest. But Gemma Hall, you know, she's the one. But within those teams, they then have someone specific to oversee T levels. You know, so there's I haven't met her yet. Her name is Jacqueline. But for the Northwest, she's now heading up, you know, T levels and T level placements, and you know the role of a T level student post qualification in the NHS and where they go. But that HEE would be my first point of contact for you as colleges, and then failing that, you know, it's your careers and engagement teams that sit within the trusts, you know, so they will come out normally to careers fairs and things like that. So you should have, you know, fairly good links with them, and they're the ones that then need to get into, you know, the chief nurse. You know, that if you can get the chief nurse and pin the chief nurse down and tell her about all the benefits, and I say her, it could be a he, you could have a male chief nurse. I only say her because I've got a female, and Bridget's probably tired of me going on about T levels and apprenticeships, and you know how we can, you know, fix the void by using these people. But you know, you get the chief nurse on side, and actually all of a sudden the placements open up. So yeah, you know, and it's quite easy. You know, most trust websites have links to all of their execs. So you can go on there, you can find the chief nurse, and you can then harass her via email or phone or a mixture of both. But you've got to show that level of, you know, commitment and get into it. But you know, with this, that's the approach that, you know, I would absolutely say, you know, chief nurses are decision makers really when it comes to, you know, the care that's being offered on their wards. So if you can go to the chief nurse and say, you know, I've got these T levels, they're, you know, the qualification will be equivalent to 3 A levels, they're covering this, and this in the syllabus, you know, we're going to provide them to you with a care certificate, you know, we want you to give us this, you know, and actually you get them, you know, you get 315 hours of free labour, and they can work on whatever shift you want them to work on. If you can find me a chief nurse that wouldn't take someone who's got a care certificate and could give them 315 hours of free labour, I'd probably find a special ward for them. You know, it's got some padded walls and stuff. Buzzers on the door to get in and out, but only on the way out. So I think that for me is kind of how you go about it. Because again, you know, one of the things I like about this poster is it says working between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. is off limits for 16 to 18-year-olds. Wrong. Young people who work in hospitals can work these hours, especially to maintain continuity of service of production. So they can work. They can work night shifts.
I think number one, can we have the poster? And number two, I think Helen's hand flew up at a particular point while she was saying that. So Helen's our director at the James Watt Centre. Under her wing, it's too long to say, but early years and health and social care are just two of the many programmes under her wing. Helen.
Yeah, it did fire up, absolutely. I don't know about Neelam, but yeah, straight away I had flashing red light. We struggle sometimes to get students out to placement in normal working hours. So having them out until maybe 9-10 o'clock, and I understand that those are the shifts that people have to do in health service, as well as night shifts and such like. But in terms of safeguarding and everything else, are we covered with having students out? Do we have to have, because with our students when they're on placement, we have a point of contact, so that if there was a problem or an issue, that then that person would be contacted. So are we going to have members of staff on call if we've got students out on placement? Those kind of things are going through my mind. Neelam, I don't know if you want to add to that.
So Helen, I'm not proposing that any of my placement students work night shifts.
No, I get that, but evenings, or are we asking them to do weekend? I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've turned around and said, and I'll go back to kind of putting national head back on and not trust head. The idea around the placement is that it's a real life work experience. So when I was talking to some employers over in Leeds who were dealing with this, their placement students are getting in a car with someone else that's travelling to site at 6:15 in the morning. So they're being picked up on the side of a street, shared vehicle to get to site, to start work at 7 o'clock in the morning, to then finish work at 4 o'clock, to then get home, and they're not home generally until about 6 o'clock because of traffic, etc. That is the real life if you're going to go work in construction. That's what you get used to. So one of the conversations that was had, and this is where the Oxford Trust did a really good placement, and they did the original trial, and they actually, but they did an early shift and a late shift. So they had students going in from, I think it was 2 till 10, and then they had students coming in at 6 till 2. And they had no problems with that. The students said it was hard work to start with, but at least I now know what I'm going to have to do in the real world. Yeah. Now, again, I have no intentions of that, because it actually doesn't sit with our handover times. So, but I do, and I have been very clear with them that actually, if they're going to come and work on one of my wards, so for example, when they go to Kendal and work on ward 10, handover starts at 7:30 and they start at 8 o'clock. So they're expected to be there for 7:30. Shift starts at 8. And then they will work until 4 o'clock when the next handover is.
Right, just out of interest, do you take part in the interview and selection process? I mean, you run a really tight ship, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And I do believe that BTEC still sit alongside T-levels. I do believe that T-levels are a different type of calibre of candidate at this moment in time.
But yeah, so for the interviews for the T-level students, no, I don't.
Okay.
So just because I haven't got the time. I'd love to.
Absolutely, I get that by the sounds of your role. But clearly you set out very high college expectations, and I bet the colleges behind all of this do have inside of a learning contract with a learner. You may be required to work on social hours. You are entering into a health and social care programme. On your placement, you may be expected to. And is that how colleges are getting around that? I can remember in the short tenure I had in health and social care that yes, you're going to be going out on placement, yes, you're going to be wiping up sick, and yes, you're going to be working with people, and this is the job basically.
So that's exactly where Oxford did. So Oxford NHS Trust and Activate Colleges were in partnership, and every single one of them signed a contract of employment. So it was set out to them very clearly, and that contract of employment was set up by the college. So the college had it, it was shared with the employer, they got to get to it. But again, if that student then, or that individual employee tipped up at the hospital inappropriately, they were sent away. And again, the college were informed. They had one individual that tipped up 2.5 hours late. An individual that kept tipping up in trainers and not shoes. First time it let it slide. Second time it was like, no, you're inappropriate, go away. Did it a third time, spoke to the college, said if it happens again, under our discipline policy, they'd be suspended. In this case, we won't want the individual back. So it's understanding that, from an employment perspective, that you treat them as employees, and therefore you do that. It's the other thing that's at the bottom of this poster. I'll take a picture for you and send it.
Thank you.
Because I can't actually do anything else with it. Lots of people ask for that, actually. But it says there about work experience students require a separate risk assessment. No, they don't. They're not required for work experience. The risk assessment covers the role. They're coming in to deliver that role. There's nothing different about them. And whenever I do my talks as the national chairman, one of my pet peeves is the fact that people blame health and safety. It's the easiest get out clause in the world. But actually it's rubbish, and you can challenge it to hell, because actually it's not. You can prove very easily. I mentioned at the start that my previous life was in the MOD, and I used to turn around and tell people that if I can take placements in a military barracks where there are armed guards on the gate, there's armoured vehicles running around, there's soldiers and lots of people, and I constantly have the threat of someone trying to blow us up because we're in the military because they don't like us, I can take students, anyone can take them.
I definitely want that poster, Ray. Definitely want that poster. Andrew, fresh set of eyes. What have we not covered that we really want to ask Ray? Because I'm aware they're at 11:15. We've got 15 minutes. What have I not covered that we need to ask? Because there's some brilliant stuff, Ray, that we've learned from you today. Please come and work in the Midlands.
I think that's what I would ask. Yeah, we need you here, Ray. So obviously you were very much involved and aware of all the challenges and develop relationships across your trusts with the colleges. I think one thing, I'm not sure this is relevant so much for you, Ray, but I think obviously we're talking, as you mentioned in the chat, Helen, now is the time that we need to be engaging with employers, because you mentioned before, Ray, 16 months before that other college were due to roll out T levels, where we're about 18 months, aren't we, from ours landing? So now is the time. But I think obviously there'll be other colleges in the region who are delivering T levels either already or will be before we start to. So I think the sooner that we can get kind of out, sort of draw a line in the sand that this is where we are with those trusts, I think we need to start that now, so that we're not coming too late, where maybe you mentioned saturation before, that maybe we're too late to the party with some of these trusts because other colleges have kind of taken those spots.
I think what was important, what Ray said, was something that was so important, and this is what we've got to look for, and it's that word collaboration, isn't it? Looking at when other people are doing their placements, when can we fit them in, because there's probably room for everyone if we all play nicely and work together on our curriculum planning and when the block releases are. And I think that's what's been absolutely key to your success. Am I right, Ray?
Absolutely, and it's the talking with the other colleges, so they've learned from each other as well, about what's working and what's not working. So Kendall are just about to finish their I say skills lab, their simulated ward. They've learned from Furness. They've shared that knowledge and experience. They've shared what works. They've shared contracts to an extent to get things cheaper. So that collaboration works, and really works if you both kind of you know, or you all engage in that. And I think that, you know, when it comes to syllabuses and things like that, they've learned from each other around that about some of the areas of practice that they're delivering. So, you know, if you've got partner colleges or, you know, colleges in the area that are already doing it, I'd be engaging with them now as well, and trying to, you know, forge a partnership and learn with them, you know, and collaborate. See, don't make the same pitfalls that they've made, you know. And I think that's where, you know, potentially the Association of Colleges can help out, is that, you know, fostering that relationship, that you know, collaborative approach, and saying, look, we know you're individual businesses, all of you have got that requirement. However, you know, how do you maximize profit in a business? There was a real example in Silicon Valley where they collaborated and all of the Silicon Valley exploded in success. Whereas, you know, there was another area in Pittsburgh in America where all of the companies locked down and you weren't allowed to say anything. That area is now desolate of technological, you know, industry, because they didn't communicate. Yet it was the biggest area in the US. So there's prime examples of why, you know, open collaboration really works. And I think that, you know, for me, that was one of the things that I really did have to exploit, was getting them around the table, getting them talking. And actually now they've started to roll that out to other areas within their colleges, so that, you know, they've got their digital departments talking to each other. So, you know, we've kind of had that success. So I would say, you know, the earlier you engage with an employer, the better. You know, and again, you know, Furness will not mind me saying, you know, their students won't just be coming to me. You know, they've got a couple of the care homes that they want to send them to, because, you know, the individual that wants to work with old people that's on that course may decide that she actually wants to go and work in a care home. She may decide that. But they also obviously send a lot of their BTEC students there. So again, you know, not cutting down placement opportunities, but actually seeing where they can be shared and exploited. So I think that's important. And the thing that you mentioned earlier, and I was going to come back to, was you mentioned about the cutting down of BTEC qualifications and defunding them. So having been consulted and asked about this by DFE, one of the things that I know their primary principle behind is reducing the different options. So right now there are 38 different qualifications to become a level 3 plumber. Please tell me how on this planet there are 38 different ways to be a plumber. Last time I checked, there's only one way really. Don't let the taps leak. You know, it's fairly simple. 27 different qualifications at level 3 to become an electrician. Being an electronics engineer, I know that there is only one way to do Ohm's law. You know, trust me, there are lots of students that have tested my patience on that, where they've tried to invent new ways to apply Ohm's law, but there's still only one way that it works. So
I think for us, Ray, it's more about the pedagogy and the availability. Being with health and social care, hopefully there's enough hospitals, enough need for nurses everywhere. For me, from a digital background, and I live out in Malvern now on the edge of Hereford, you try to get a placement on digital programming when it's all farming. I think the two exist, and it is about the two pedagogies that need to coexist. And I do believe at the moment that yeah, T levels are for elite students. They're not accessible for everyone. If you meet our foundation learners, you would definitely realise that some learners have a 3-year plan before they get to where they're going to arrive with you guys, and there will be a plan, but they take a lot longer. So I'm not against T levels. I just think there's a co-equity on that. And I hear what you're saying about the 36 odd qualifications with electricians and stuff like that. But for me, the vocational and the T levels can harmonise and can work together really well.
Yeah, there's no aim to get rid of them. So it's just, you know, to rationalise them. So that we haven't got that plethora of qualifications that, you know, as an employer, you know, it's like, so you've got a BTEC, you've got something else, It's like yours was awarded by City and Guild, yours was awarded by NCCF. It's like, seriously, what's going on here? So, you know, I think that rationalisation piece is what's got to happen. But you're right, there is absolutely horses for courses. And one of the things I probably should have said is that one of my previous roles in the military was I was the head of accreditation and validation for our Defence Technical Training School. So wow. I know all about students and
pedagogy. You're well on it.
Yeah.
Doesn't suit everyone. Now I've ignored Nafisa, Ray, and she may have a burning question because I'm looking at the time thinking, how to get the best out of this 9 minutes. Nafisa, what have we missed? What do we want to pick up on?
I don't think it's necessarily got a question. I think first time this year I'm working with the health and social care students as a placement officer, and I generally feel bad for majority of our students because they are wanting to have experience in hospitals because they want to become midwives, nurse, etc. And they've been rejected, and therefore they've ended up taking on placements where they don't have the desire to go into that career. So for example, they've gone on to working with children in primary schools. So as you said, it's just about having that collaboration with certain organizations and settings so that we are able to place our students where they genuinely want to, you know, build their career in. So that's the difficulty I found, even trying to get through to somebody in a hospital to, you know, ask for a placement has been extremely difficult. You know, asking to be sent emails, and I've sent numerous emails, have not heard back. So I think it's just finding a way to be able to communicate and get students into a hospital. I think that's been the biggest barrier for me.
And I think, Ray, you've given us some starters for 10, and Anthony, I don't know if there's a piece of work that we can work on with the AOC in pulling together as a region one voice, because I hear what Ray's saying totally, and what stands out for me is the fact that it is about the collaboration, getting people into one room across the many colleges, if you like, which isn't an easy place to be. And I know I do an informal health and social care group once a term, just finding out what people are up to, but really it needs to be more than that now. It needs to have a single voice of what can we give to you. And I hear that really loud and clear, Ray, about the care certificate, the training beforehand, people being prepared and coming in with something to offer. And I've certainly taken a lot away from that today. I don't know if there's anything else that you would say to us. Yep, if you had that, you know, this is what we'll make it.
It's all about a resourcing model that backs it up. So, you know, you mentioned about having a, you know, a placement coordinator or a teacher on call for welfare and safeguarding. Absolutely, you've got to make sure you've got that and you've got that in hand, and that you're clear on that that's your responsibility.
Yeah.
The trust will obviously, you know, play their part when it comes to safeguarding, but again, you know, it's that delegation of responsibility that it comes straight back, that it doesn't come in to you or anything else like that. You know, that it is yours, and that, you know, any incidents like that you're there to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, support with you know, equipment. You know, so for example, if you're sending them in appropriate clinical clothing and making sure that they've got it. Now again, you know, so we've helped with regards to, you know, scrubs, you know, in the past. But again, you know, if you're coming in, it's about being dressed appropriately. So, you know, we've started to look at the cost of uniform and how that would be, you know, covered. So again, I know originally when they were looking at this, there were employer costs that could be claimed through the colleges. So if that's one of them and that's there, you know, then utilise it. You know, engage early, get their uniforms early, actually make them wear it to college.
Yeah, we did that at Hales Owen when I took over. They didn't have a uniform, and we made them wear the uniform to college as well. So it had a badge on, so like Hales Owen College Health and Social Care. So we knew that when they were going out on placement, that the expectation was to remain the same. And it's part of the contract that when they came on the course, they were expected to get 2 t-shirts and black trousers and appropriate trainers. So things like that all stack up from what you're saying. These are the things that might seem like small expectations, but it's getting them work ready before they walk through your door.
Absolutely. And you know, we are, you know, very clear. We have a uniform for student nurses, and looking at, you know, whether we can, you know, allow that to be funded through the college to buy that to provide for those students as part of that. And again, you know, it comes out, you know, it's not a lot of money per student, but for a trust as us, if we were to pay for that for, you know, all 100 students,
it doesn't make it an attractive offer, does it? But if they're coming in and they're wearing the togs and they're looking the part and they're skilled up to a safe, like you say, this is about keeping them safe and keeping the patients safe. That gives you the confidence.
But it's also about them, you know, being appropriately dressed for the risk. So, you know, wearing a tunic with a pair of, you know, clinical trousers and a pair of sturdy shoes, you know, really important. You know, they could be helping a nurse who drops a needle. We don't want that going into their foot like it would through a pair of trainers. If they've got a pair of socks and leather shoes, that needle's not potentially going to pierce all the way through. It may stick in the shoe, it may bounce off of it. Whereas if it's a trainer, the likelihood is it'll go straight through, stick in their foot. We then have a needle stick injury. You know, so it's all of those things that start to tie in. You know, and if it's a clinical clothing, actually it's designed to be boil washed to be, you know, clean, less chance of infection. So again, you know, making sure that's there is something that's really useful.
I'd never considered footwear before because we didn't have hospitals, so that's useful. I made a note of that as well as the clinical clothing on the top. That's really helpful. We've got 3 minutes to go. Helen, any other questions? What have I not asked?
No, nothing. I think there's a lot of questions internally that we need, a lot of discussion that needs to take place. And you know, I've been attending the childcare network for West Midlands, and I think Deb's doing the same for the health T level. So we have got links with other colleges, but it's about, you know, ramping it up, I think, a bit now and really starting to drive this forward.
Absolutely. Neelam?
No questions from me. I think it's been very informative, and quite similarly, I've got a lot of things to explore and have a look at how we can put in some simulation for our students and sort of get those things ready for their all. But no, nothing. Thank you very much, Ray.
Violet?
No, I think I haven't got any questions, but like what Helen says, I think we need internally, there's some things to bring together, definitely.
Absolutely. Nafisa?
No questions from me. Just want to say thank you very much because it has been very informative.
And Andrew?
No, just echo what Helen and Violet have said about internal discussion. But thanks to Anthony for arranging this, and thanks to Ray for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. It's been really informative.
Absolutely. And Ray, if you have the contact details of your colleague in Furness, I'd be so interested if you pass it on. Would love to touch base with what they're doing there. Thank you so much for today.
Before you go, I'll pop her email address in there for you.
Beautiful. That is absolutely brilliant. Thank you for your very, very valuable time today. I've learned such a lot in a short amount of time about how to start a process and about the things that we can offer, that we can put in place and talk about as a team. I've learned a heck of a lot. So thank you so much, and please come to the Midlands.
I was going to say, so the only other thing that I would add to that big long list of things that I was mentioning, which just because I glanced over to my emails and it was sat on top, is about occupational health clearance. So again, you know, when they're coming into the hospital, is making sure that all their vaccinations are up to date. So again, it's the sharing of that information and letting them know that they will be required to share that information with the trust if they're coming on site. So thankfully, they've got rid of VCOD, so vaccinations as a condition of deployment, because we had actually had to be really clear to say that we wouldn't take anyone on placement that hadn't been vaccinated, because we wouldn't be allowed to come on site, because they'd be delivering care. But you know, there are obviously other vaccinations that are a requirement depending on where you're working, such as Hep B, you know, TB, you know, varicella. So you know, there are a number of them. So again, you know, their vaccination status and health conditions will need to be disclosed. So again, having that conversation with students and the employer about what is their requirements for occupational health so that they can go and get the vaccinations if they're needed, or actually so that the student can't go on that placement and you have to go elsewhere. But having that conversation really will help, because again, you know, we've had that with one of the students at Kendall, that we're putting them somewhere else because they haven't had the Hep B and don't want to have it.
Right. Okay, that's something I wouldn't have thought of at all. That's going on my list as well. That's so helpful. And I think there is something about a course document that says that when you come on this course, these are the expectations, these are the hours that you might be asked to work as part of your placement, and you are required to share information and have vaccinations to keep yourself safe. I think there's a document that we need to work on, probably with Stephen Belling, Helen, about this, but that would be brilliant. Thank you so much, Ray. It's been really, really, really helpful today. Really appreciate your time.
No worries. Pleasure.
Have a cracking day.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Take
Bye.
care. Bye, everyone.